Janet Leith is head of physiotherapy at Erskine, and she's someone that I guess many people will know around Erskine, particularly in Bishopton, where she's based at the Veterans Village there, and she helps out our veterans in terms of moving more, maybe recovering from bumps or problems that they've had, and keeping the mobility going, which is hugely important for all of our well-being. And she's going to have some advice that we all can take on board, regardless of our age or condition, and ways that we can keep our bodies moving and keep looking after ourselves. And she's also going to tell us about the Erskine Sporting Senior Games, which is something that has been a big part of Erskine over the last years or so, and returns this year slightly different, but we'll hear more about that. But first of all, my great pleasure to welcome Janet Leith to Erskine Veterans Radio. Janet, just start by telling us a little bit about yourself. What attracted you to physiotherapy, and how did you find yourself in this role of work in the first place?
Thank you for inviting me for an interview today, Ian. Yes, so I always wanted to be a physiotherapist later on in school. It was my choice of career. So I went straight from school to what was then the Queen's College in Glasgow and trained as a physiotherapist. I graduated in 1982, so that's quite a long time ago now, and I have had quite a varied career in physiotherapy. I worked in general hospitals. I worked at the Southern General Hospital for a number of years, doing on rotation in lots of different specialties. Really enjoyed working with older people even at that stage. Then I moved to Lanarkshire and worked with outpatients. But I've also worked out with the NHS. I worked for a charity which is now called Revive MS Support for a number of years and supported people with multiple sclerosis. That was really interesting. So I've worked, in the charitable sector as well as working in the NHS. After a while for working Revive, I went back into the NHS and worked for a new team which supported people at home. So that's where my kind of community background came in as well. So I worked there for a number of years, and then ultimately worked on a pilot project, looking at supporting older people in hospital and then supporting them out into the community. And I was doing that for a while and then decided I really wanted to move on, do something different. And I went back to work for Revive MS Support part-time, but I also worked for a company called PhysiCare, which provided occupational health type physiotherapy for employees. And I was doing that. I'd done that for nearly a year, working for both of them. And an ex-colleague of mine had seen the advert for the head physiotherapy post in the Herald, as we did in those days, in the Herald newspaper. And she saw it and she thought it would be an ideal post for me because of my background in stroke and also my background in community and working with older people. She thought it would be an ideal opportunity for me. And looking at it, that's also what I thought. And I applied for the post, and I came to Erskine in 2008 as their new head physiotherapist because the previous post holder, Katie Lowe, had retired. And I've been here ever since and have really, really enjoyed my years at Erskine and really enjoyed working with our residents that are here. It's not been so good over the last 18 months with the pandemic. That's been a huge challenge, but we're certainly hopefully emerging from it now. So that's kind of my background as far as a career is concerned and how I came to be at Erskine.
What are the key differences that you find working at Erskine versus maybe in general everyday sort of NHS healthcare? I suppose you have more of a regular relationship with a lot of the people that you're working with, first of all.
Yes, I think that is one of the big differences, is that because this is people's homes and people are living here over a long number of months or years, that you definitely develop a different kind of relationship with people, and it's a much more long-term therapeutic relationship and involves much more working with families and with relatives as well as working with the residents themselves. And I think that's what I get the buzz out of. That's what I really enjoy, working, a longer term, having a longer term relationship with people and trying to give people the best quality of life possible, and working with people to do that, working with our residents to do that. I'm very passionate about the physical activity agenda, which is where the games come into the kind of picture. But I'm very passionate about that, giving people or enabling people really to move towards physical activity as part of their life. It's very hard to say to somebody who's old, very old, if you exercise regularly, you'll live longer. That's very hard to say. It was hard to say to the resident who was 105. Our oldest resident I've ever worked with was 105 at Erskine. It's hard to say to him, if you exercise, you'll live longer. But what you can say to people is if you exercise, you will live better. You'll have better quality of life. And I think that's really where my sort of passion is.
I was thinking about that for people, because clearly this show goes out throughout the Erskine homes and to all the residents, but we have a lot of people listen who are family members or supporters or fundraisers. What would you say to them in order, from what you see of how people's bodies go and the importance in looking after our bodies as we grow up? What are the things that we should be doing more of to keep ourselves out of your department at a later age?
Out of my department, yes. Right. So in Leith, there are Chief Medical Officer guidelines for physical activity. In all 4 nations of the UK. So the recommended guidelines are 150 minutes of moderate activity every week. And moderate activity means you need to get your heart rate and your breathing rate up. So obviously that, from over 16-year-olds, it's from 16 to 65, that's what applies. So you need to get your heart rate up and you need to get your breathing rate up in 150 minutes in a week. The other thing that's really, really important is to break up what we call sedentary behavior. So currently we're indulging in sedentary behavior right now because we're sitting down. But the advice is very much to move around as often as possible. So you will know that some of the big IT tech giants don't have seats in their offices. They have standing desks, and there's a huge move to help people move around more often. So I think that's the other big message, is you need to move more often, move as much as you can, but moving really frequently and often is the big message. And we should be doing that probably from our 30s onwards, because there's a big dip after people are 30 and they're involved in families and jobs and everything. There's a big dip in people's physical activity, and that's what we need to reverse. We need to improve our physical activity. So for our children under 16s, they should be doing an hour of physical activity every day. So unless we get our devices off them where they're going to actually be moving around. So that's really what we should all be doing. And for older people over 65, the advice is that they should be doing 2 sessions of strength and balance work every week as well. And those are the things that are going to give people good physical health into old age and into older adulthood.
Yeah, I've got a watch that keeps telling me if I've not moved enough, and it tells me off through the day. It's like, come on, you should have done this by now.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing about devices and about technology. It's one of the things that can enhance our physical activity, and I think that's what we need to do. So physiotherapists are certainly moving forward into virtual treatment screens, and particularly with the pandemic, a lot of physiotherapy has moved online. There's a certain amount you can do, there's a certain amount you can't do, obviously, but certainly there's been so much online to help older people, not just older people, but everybody do a reasonable amount of physical activity, while the pandemic's been a problem for us. So that just enhances it. It's really, really important. And one of the things that has happened to our residents here is that because we've restricted their mobility, because we've restricted their ability to go out and about, and we've confined them to their houses and their rooms, they've lost a lot of ground physically, and it's regaining that is really difficult. So that's what we're about at the moment. So it's regaining physical activity.
And one way that people can get involved and maybe regain some of that mobility and give themselves something to aim for is taking part in the Sporting Senior Games, which have been a big part of Erskine for a few years now, and that's something that you've very much been involved in. Tell us about how they came to be in the first place. What's the history of the Sporting Senior Games?
Okay, so there are two kind of major streams that flow in together. So in 2014, you will remember that the Commonwealth Games were in Glasgow, and as part of that, there was a fund called the Celebrate Fund, which was designed to help groups, organisations, charities, anybody that was really interested, have some kind of event related to the Games. And what Erskine did was, in fact, we got £10,000 from the Celebrate Fund, and we set up our own Erskine Commonwealth Games. So at that point, there were 5 Erskine care homes. So we set up and we had a competition over 2 weeks in the summertime round the games, round the Commonwealth Games. We had our own games, helped by the fact that the Commonwealth Torch actually visited Erskine here in Bishopton. Shireen Nanjani was the person who was carrying the torch, and she actually brought the torch to Erskine, which was fantastic. But what we did was we designed a whole competition around the games kind of theme. So we had our torch, which went on the back of a motorbike all the way from our Edinburgh home to our Glasgow home. And then people cycled and ran with the torch and brought it to Erskine and then to Bishopton. And then we had a fortnight of competition, various sports. Fortunately, that year the weather was really good, so a lot happened outside. We had a big opening ceremony. And there's actually footage of this, of a Scottish version of the haka, which was really, really good to open the games. So we had a fortnight of competition. For that, we discovered that our residents could be unbelievably competitive, and were very, very keen to win medals. So we had medals. And at the end of that, we actually won a National Lottery Award for our games. So that kind of led into thinking, what are we going to do next? One of our residents, called John Bowman, who had been a very keen participant, spoke to a member of my staff and said, well, I would still be able to do all this in 2 years' time. And the person concerned said, why, John, why 2 years' time? Well, I've got to get ready for the Rio Games. So therefore we realised, right, we're not going to get away with doing nothing. We need to do something else. We need to keep this going. And the other stream that sort of fits into this, so that's basically where the games started. But the other stream is that we have a lot of contact with Professor Dawn Skelton, who's the Professor of Active Ageing at Caledonian University, and she has a lot of contacts. There was a stream of activity around the 2012 Games in London, the Olympic Games, and there was a network set up for older people at that point called the Gold Network, which was about physical activity as well, and Dawn was very involved in that, and I've got connections with Dawn because of working with her on something called the Functional Fitness MOT and various other aspects, and she has connections with Jerry Olympics in West Virginia. And the West Virginians have been running Jerry Olympics for 35 years. So they run a kind of sporting competition as well. So those two streams came together in 2015, where we ran our own games at Caledonian University, and we had an American team who came over to take part. And since then, we've just developed the games over the years. And in 2016, we had Erskine Centenary Games because it was Erskine's centenary. Unfortunately, last year, obviously, we had to cancel the games. So that's kind of where it's all come from, and it's grown over the years. And it doesn't just involve Erskine teams now. We now have a number of other care homes who have got involved and who've had, have sent teams. And we now have teams who come to compete for the medals. And John Bowman, unfortunately, didn't make it to the Rio Games. He died before the games occurred in 2016, but his son has donated a trophy in his name because he was so passionate about the games. So the winning team now obtains, or they compete for the John Bowman Trophy. it's currently sitting in the Erskine home, but it has previously been in other homes Ailsa Lodge in Bishopton, who won it one year as well. So that trophy is up for grabs this year as we run our games into this year, which are going to be a wee bit different this year because obviously of the pandemic. So what we're planning and is well underway now is more of a round robin type of competition. So instead of having a central venue and one day of competition, myself and Craig Berry, who is the activities coordinator at the Erskine home, who's been very involved in the games all the way through, he and I are going to go and visit each individual team and conduct 4 sports. We're just going to do 4 sports this year, and collate all of that and have an award ceremony on the 1st of October, which is International Older People's Day. So that's what we're going to do this year. And then hopefully next year is Commonwealth Games year. Next year, relaunch the whole games in the way that we've done before. So that's our plan of action. So we're hoping it's shaping up to look really good this year. Despite the pandemics, most of our stakeholders have responded with, yes, we very much to take part. So that's looking really good. And that will be from the 20th of September over the 2 weeks leading up to the 1st of October.
The Sporting Senior Games, we're seeing the athletes being very competitive on the TV at the moment in the Olympics. The Sporting Senior Games is also taken very, very seriously by many of our veterans, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So we use something called the Functional Fitness MOT, which is just a fun way of looking at people's fitness. So we've used that in the past early on in the year, usually about June time, and then we get people to start training. And yes, residents are very keen to train. And I know that the other care homes involved are already training for the games because of my links with them. And the local organisers are saying, yes, the residents are already in training. It's highly competitive. I can't believe how competitive people can be. And that's not just the staff, that's the residents themselves. And we regularly have quite a lot of shouting and people supporting each other's teams and stuff. It's really, really good. So yeah, our residents are already starting to train for the games as well. If you see people throwing javelins, we use a foam javelin. So if you see people throwing javelins around Erskine, that's what they're doing. They've not lost the plot. And we're doing basketball this year and golf and Boccia bowls. Normally we also have cycling and a version of curling, which is really good, which is on with stones on rollers. But not everybody has that equipment, so we're just sticking to 4 sports this year. So
very good. I was going to say what are the sports, but you've answered that question there. So it sounds it sounds really good. Curling though, Scotland are good at curling, so there should be some dab hands at that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And it's the full thing with the brushes and we've got a target and everything. It's actually indoor curling. The way we use it is quite a big thing. Not just in the older community, but there are big sort of international competitions with using that form of curling. It's curling with a K rather than with a C. So if you look it up online, it's curling with a K, not curling with a C. So it is a big international kind of type of competition as well.
Oh, fantastic. Mm-hmm. We'll look forward to seeing more about that, and I'm sure we'll be announcing the results further in the year once they happen.
Absolutely. So yes, we'll be announcing all the results. Yes, yeah, we'll be able to do that. Yeah, that's Craig and I's responsibility to collate the results and work out who's the winning team for the trophy.
Brilliant. Well, maybe next year once you get the games back, to normal. Does everything usually happen on one day then? Is that what it would normally be like?
Yes. We normally try and stay close to Older People's Day because that ties in with the other events that are going on, nationally and internationally. So it's generally around the last weekend in September. It's usually one day. So the last time we had the games, we were at the Arc in Glasgow, at Glasgow Caledonian University. And normally the situation is we have all the teams converge. We have a big opening ceremony with a piper and banners, and all the teams wear individual team T-shirts rather than a uniform. And then we have a morning of competition, and then lunch. Usually we provide lunch, and then some kind of form of entertainment in the afternoon, and then a very brief closing ceremony where the medals are awarded and the trophy is handed out as well. And John Bowen's son usually comes to present that trophy. So it's usually a very busy day, but it's a very involved day. And we're very grateful to Glasgow Caledonian University for the venue. But the other thing that we wouldn't be able to run it without is the volunteers. And we usually have between 30 and 40 volunteers, mostly students, mostly physiotherapy or other allied health professional student volunteers from the university. So we've got usually have a student coordinator who coordinates the volunteers from the university. So we have lots of young physios, young OTs, actually we've had some dental students and various other students who are available at the time. So what's really good is we couldn't run it without them, but also it gives the students the opportunity to really engage with older people and to really realise what older people are capable of and what's actually possible for people who are, in their 80s and 90s and 100s. So that's really useful, and that intergenerational contact is really very, very positive. And the students really, really enjoy it. They come back year after year as well, so in the years that they're at the university. So that's one of the reasons why we're having an adapted competition this year, because accessing the students is going to be more difficult just because of the pandemic. But that's a really good part of the whole kind of competition day. So we have it on one day, and people go home with their medals and go home with their rosettes. We always have rosettes, competition rosettes, so they go home with that. And we see frequently medals hanging up in people's rooms or on their wheelchairs. And they're very proud to show off their medals and their rosettes to their families and things. So.
No, it's a nice thing to have, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And what about the future of the games, though? Because I hear that you are, whilst you're the leading light in all of this, that you are soon to be retiring from active service.
That's right, yes. So I'm scheduled to retire at the end of this year, and I'm sure that the current other organisers and movers and shakers in this competition are going to want me to be there in some shape or form. I would very much like to continue my involvement with the games in some role or other. I'm hoping that my successor will, to use a sporting phrase, pick up the baton into next year. But very much I see this as an ongoing, developing situation. So I'm hoping the games, in fact, next year will grow, and that because people will see what's possible, that the games will grow and develop. Ideally, I'd love to see a big national competition with localised heats and things, but we're not really very sure how that's going to develop. But yes, I would love to stay involved next year, but obviously I wouldn't have the influence because I'll not be in post. But I'm hoping that Craig and the other organisers will be happy that I can still interfere next year and be involved next year with it, and as it goes forward. It's something I don't want to lose contact with. It's something I'd very much like to still be involved in some role or other, in some way or other, and helping them keep it going. So, but very much my successor, hopefully here at Erskine, will pick up the baton and carry on it. Carry on, yeah.
I'm sure they will, and I'm sure you'll still be very much part of it come the big day when it all happens.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for chatting to us, Janet. It's been great speaking with you and learning about the things that you do, and of course the sporting senior games, and something to look out for. Of course, there again, 20th of September. Did you say through the end of September, start of October?
Yes, and we'll keep you up to date with the results as they come out. I think that's what they say, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. As they come in, absolutely. We'll have and medal tables and all that kind of thing at the end of it. I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Finally, then, have you got a choice of music for us that we should play to play us out, really, from our chat?
Yeah. Well, I had to rethink about this because there's a number of pieces that I link with Erskine and exercise. So I almost thought we'll have Let's Twist again like we did last summer. But actually my own personal or music like that, because that says easy to exercise to. But actually I'm much more a classical music person. And my church connection and my Christian faith is really important to me. So my favourite piece of music is Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring by Bach. So that's a piece of music that I have chosen because of my faith and my church connections. So that's a piece of music